So yeah, basically, Lauren, I wanted to chat to you today about your career in sort of PR. Obviously, we do a lot of work in wrestling, but from a wider perspective, how did you get into, sort of PR, the PR world? What was your journey into this job?
Well, it's a bit of an interesting one. Weirdly, when I was in school and stuff like that, people say, oh, you'd be great in PR, you'd do this, you'd do that, blah, blah, blah. But I never really understood what it was. Without going into like the personal side of it, because that's boring. Like, I didn't really follow the traditional method of kind of progressing into a career. I did all sorts of things. I used to manage a nightclub. I was a dance instructor. I did all sorts. I ended up falling into recruitment and worked in 2 different companies, but used those as stepping stones to move into PR. So when I was in my second recruitment job, I took it because it was recruiting into PR and social media agencies. So I built my network in PR and social media when social media was very, very new as well, as much as I'm aging myself here. So it was all kind of very new and exciting. So I just kind of used that, and I became acquainted with somebody who was working like freelancing for a bigger agency, who got in touch with me after I did like a day's work with them, and we actually randomly met on a night out with mutual friends as well.
Oh, nice.
And he was launching the Manchester office of Frank PR, which is one of the top independent PR agencies in the country, which is called Mank Frank, which is still going today. So myself and Graham launched that office. It was just me and him in a small shoebox of an office for about 6 months. Because he said to me, you can't teach the kind of business acumen and the personality and that side of things. He said, but you've got that. He said, I need your business acumen. I can teach you PR. So that was the kind of path there. And my first client for them was Clear Vision, which most wrestling fans will know was the first home distribution company to handle WWE's home entertainment, basically. So that went on for a while, which is where me working with WWE comes in. So I've just fell into wrestling. It wasn't something that I came from fandom. Okay. I watched it with my brother when I was a kid. I used to, love Bret Hart, loved, who was my favorite? Bret Hart, Randy Savage, enjoyed watching it with him. But I'm, in total honesty, I didn't come in as a massive fan. And I think that helped me because I could look at things, and still do look at things objectively, and can come in from the PR and the marketing side with, objections and opinions and perspectives from other sides. So it kind of progressed from there. So obviously the Clear Vision contract with WWE came to an end when they went with, was it Psycho Entertainment they went with? Someone. They moved anyway, which was detrimental for Clear Vision because they actually ended up folding. But before that happened, they went straight to TNA. So my last project with Clear Vision for WWE was the launch of the 10th anniversary of Wrestling Shadows, which is Bret Hart's documentary. But that happened a few years out of sorts because of the obvious issues between the Hart family and with Bret and Owen's wife and things like that. So he came over to London, which was great for me as a non-wrestling fan who enjoyed it as a child, and he was like my ultimate favorite. So it was quite cool. He did one of the first Q&As before it became a really popular thing it wasn't the Savoy. I can't remember which hotel it was, one of the really posh ones that has a theatre in the hotel. Cannot remember what it was called, it'll come to me later. So he came, we did a load of media with him. I sat and interviewed him as well with some outstanding questions we were sent from other people, which was really cool. I walked him to lunch to go and meet his friend, and I said to him, look, I'm going to drop the professionalism for a minute. You were my absolute favourite as a kid. And he looked at me and went, so what went wrong? And I was like, wrong thing, said wrong thing. Anyway, I'm veering off, but I always like that story. So that was where the TNA stuff started. That was where I met Simon. So he said to me, we've got a tour coming up, just starting the TNA / Impact contract. So Sai and Impact took me on as a freelancer to assist Sai with all the PR and marketing on the tour, and that experience was second to none, like something you just can't buy. My biggest regret from that tour is that I never got a picture with Hulk Hogan, because that was the last one that he did, and he's Hulk Hogan. Obviously with all his faults, he's still Hulk Hogan. Because then I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what I could do. I didn't know what was professional. I didn't know what was unprofessional, but I should have just had a photo. But that was really cool, because I actually came to manage all the the VIP stuff, the meet and greets, our version of the Make-A-Wish stuff, which is probably my absolute favorite thing I've ever done in my career ever. every year with the tours. So it kind of it progressed from there, in the sense of me and Simon would always bring me in to work on the tours. I'd be working in the background on the clear vision stuff with Impact. So it was a little more disjointed back then, but we've worked together 10 years now on Impact stuff.
Yeah.
In more recent years, I'd say was it about 5 years ago, was when we actually brought on the social media stuff, because we weren't doing that initially. Jeremy Borash was doing that, and obviously when he left, someone needed to do it, so we took on the whole kind of encompassed package with Impact in the UK. And it just built from there. I went freelance in 2015 after working in agency and working in a few other jobs and doing the Impact stuff on the side. And it was just a progression thing. I would recommend to anybody who wants to build their career like that, if they're not going down the traditional routes, is to use everything as a stepping stone. Don't think that if you don't jump straight into your dream job straight away that you're a failure, because you're not. It takes time. It took me until I actually got into the swing of doing what I was doing, good 5 years. Yeah. I didn't go to uni. I'm actually in college now studying, and I'm going to uni in September.
Oh, nice. Congratulations.
Thank you. I'll tell you more about that later. But I'm 36, and I actually love the fact that the world is turning into a place where you can make those decisions later in life. So what I'm saying now, advice-wise, isn't just to people, in their late teens, early 20s trying to decide what to do. It's to anybody of any age. You can do whatever you want to do whenever you want to do it. You don't have to follow the traditional path. So choose everything as a stepping stone and be positive and network. That is the basis of everything. Yeah. Have a positive attitude. Don't let people walk all over you, and you'll get to where you want to be.
Absolutely. And that moves on nicely to my next question. In terms of, advice and tips for any young person, obviously you mentioned there, not necessarily rushing into your dream job or trying to get into it. In terms of what key skills they would need, you mentioned the networking stuff. Now, we work with a lot of people who maybe struggle with, as we work with a lot of people that struggle with their kind of self-image. Maybe they're really creative and really motivated, but they struggle with the self-image, a little bit of that confidence. And I wonder where your confidence came from, and have you ever had a crisis of confidence, and how did you overcome that?
That's a good question. I wouldn't say a crisis of confidence. I was a lot more confident when I was younger, but it was almost misplaced confidence. Because as you get older and you look back on it, you think, I wasn't as confident as I thought I was. I'm very good at putting on a front. I come across as very outgoing. I am, in a way. I'm more of like an extroverted introvert, I think. Yeah. But that's come with time. I was much more kind of wanted the attention, wanted to be in the spotlight, that kind of thing. Not in a kind of self-indulgent way, just kind of, I thought I wanted to go that way because I'm a singer as well. So that was what I thought I wanted. And then with the way that the music industry's developed, and you'll know about this yourself with what you do, it wasn't what I wanted it to be. It's not what I thought it was in here. And the way that music is moving forward now, I don't find my place in it. The only place I find is with music video, and that's where I'm going into with my studies. Wonderful. But I think it's important, advice-wise, to make sure you have a realistic perception of what you're going into, and not to be clouded by what you want it to be. Yeah. Because wrestling falls under that category as well. And there's anything that you've been enamored with especially since you were a child, you have an expectation of what it's going to be like. Yeah. And I don't want to put people off it. So I want to be careful about how I word this, but I think it would be the same with any industry. Don't take the sparkle out of your eyes with it, but be realistic about it. Do your research. That's where networking comes in as well. Get to know people. We've got so many friends who work for a certain massive company that no, I probably shouldn't say this actually. We know a lot of people who've come in and out of that company, and a lot of people go into it with expectations, and those expectations are very rarely met unless you're AJ Styles, Hulk Hogan, The Rock. Those expectations are not going to be met. It's going to be hard. Yes, you will be, and this is what a lot of fans say, but you get paid a ton. It's not all about money. It's very rarely about money for performers and people who are artistic and creative, because they want to express themselves.
It's a good point.
I mean, the money is a bonus because it obviously changes your life in many, many ways. But it's the reality of things. If you go into it with a realistic perspective, or even lower your expectations, then you're less likely to be disappointed. It's God, it's so difficult to word it properly without either putting people off.
I see what you mean.
Or, it's difficult.
It sounds like it's having realistic expectations, going in there with your eyes open rather than kind of the blinkers are on. This is the dream. This is the dream job. Anything can be. I think perception versus reality is such a huge part of our industry and the creative industries. Perception is everything. So if you can make something, look a certain way, then that's great. But the reality might be very different. You know what I mean? And I think that's a huge part of what certainly the industry seems to be. But certainly in my my perspective, people go, "Oh, this is amazing! What an amazing job!" or "What an amazing life!" But they don't see the hours of for example, with those people you mentioned, the training, the extra hours, the media stuff, the all the pressures that are on those people to be a certain way. If it's the not to assume that you're talking about anybody particular, but there seems to be a perception that the grass is always greener, etc. And it might be in some ways, but it's being open-minded, I think, as to what's possible.
Absolutely. And I think within the last couple of years, people are going in with wider eyes and not expecting it to be all shiny and brand new. And obviously there's been some recent things where certain people have left and people are making assumptions, and they're wrong assumptions. It's like, oh, well, you're getting paid, you know what it's like, what the grueling schedule is like, what's expected of you. For one, the expectations are ridiculous as it is. I'm not going into that because for obvious reasons, but it can break a person, and we've seen people break. We've seen people die because they've taken too many steroids because they're expected to fit a certain cookie cutter. We've seen people take their own lives because of their expectations and because of what fans have said about them, because of social media, because of the Twitterati. And I was even attacked during speaking out by people who don't even know me, who screen grabbed tweets of mine from years ago, misinterpreted them without the full story of what was going on, put them out there and slandered me. I had to give a statement to the police about it. So it's, I can't even imagine what some of these people in the public eye have to deal with on a daily basis when they're being criticized for such small things. You get one person leave a company and it's like, oh, well, you should have known better. You don't know what's going on in that person's life.
No.
And that's where, sorry, I've gone a bit off on one.
No, it's all useful. It's all useful. Yeah.
But I get quite protective of some of those people, even if I don't know them, because, we see what happens when these things go too far.
Of course. And,
this is another thing that people do need to be aware of. Obviously, I work in social media, but it kind of makes it all that more apparent. I work with it from a marketing side. That's a very different thing from being on it every day and being able to hide behind a keyboard. And don't get me wrong, I'm a very opinionated person and I do love a good debate, but not everybody's like that. They will just attack. So, and that's something that you do need to be aware of if it's a business that you're moving into that is perceived a certain way or is in the public eye. So that has a very significant impact on what you're doing. No pun intended. But one of the things I do love about Impact is that, especially now, is that it's not fake. With everyone coming out and saying, I've got this freedom, I've got that freedom. No place is perfect, but the locker room is happy. Generally, the locker room is happy, and you have that vibe throughout everybody. I think Scott's doing an absolutely phenomenal job. One thing that we see on social media is Impact need a TV deal, blah 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 blah, and we get that, and we get the frustration from the UK fans, but it's not that simple.
No.
And Scott has basically brought the company back from the brink of death, and he's done it sensibly. We've literally gone like this over the last 5 years. We literally thought there was going to be no more Impact on several occasions, and then Scott has done this slowly and gradually, and it's getting so exciting now. And that reflects internally massively. So look for a company that does that. that's another piece of advice.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that comes through talking to you is your passion and emotion outside of, you know, being a wrestling fan as a child, but also, you know, you're talking about that connection with, you know, the performers, and even if you don't know them that well, that connection there. And I certainly get that on, you know, on these calls, you know, when you're having a little bit of banter with the performers and stuff. And how important for you is that connection with these performers, you know, when you're doing this work, you know, because they're having long days, there's a lot of pressure on them to act a certain way or be a certain way. I mean, I'm making an assumption there, but, you know, they've got certain things to promote.
That's true, yeah.
They've got certain things to promote, certain things to plug, you know, if it's a Fight TV pay-per-view, for example. So how important is it for you to kind of to sort of be there and supervise, support, and kind of nurture these relationships? Because it sounds to me like you've really worked to build, you know, a good relationship with the performers and the people in these companies.
Oh, massively. Yeah, I mean, obviously you naturally get on with some people more than others, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Doesn't mean you don't like someone. You know, I've got some good friends that I've had for years in this business through Impact. Like D'Lo Brown is one of my best friends in the whole world. I adore him. You know, Vicky Haskins is my best friend in the world. You know, I wouldn't know them without wrestling. Through wrestling, where it's kind of like really good friends, but obviously you're not on top of each other all the time. It's kind of like really good work friends. Eddie Edwards, Sammy Callahan, Diona Perazzo is a delight to work with. I've never actually met her face to face, but every time we've worked together, she's absolutely amazing, so professional. Nick and Mickey I've known for years.
Nice.
Brilliant people. Mike and Maria were absolute darlings to work with. But then, you know, with the you know, the interviews that we do and stuff, we connect with different people that we haven't actually met face to face before. A couple of examples I can give you: Steve Macklin, we dead professional, on time. Obviously he's an ex-military man, so, you know, he was very kind of on it, and he was perfectly fine. We got on fine, and then we got on to talking about Marvel, and straight away we were like, right, full on conversation. Now we're friends. Jordan Grace, exactly the same. She's very professional and everything, and we were chatting, but then we got onto a topic that we both felt really passionate about, and then we just knew each other better straight away. So I try and do that with everyone, and I can't think of a person on the roster that I've worked with any time within the last couple of years that I've not had that with. You know, even down to I had to go and pick Moose up from Wolverhampton. He came back to our house to do interviews on the sofa, and then went to the gym with Danny, my husband.
No way, yeah.
So that's so lovely to be able to do that. That was pre-COVID, obviously. But it's super important. It's super important. You can't expect people to be, you know, and you don't want, you know, people to think, oh, I'm your best friend because I'm going to do something for you. There's no fake relationships with it. Everybody understands their role and what's expected of them. We know what's expected of us, but it is part of our jobs to put them at ease, to make sure that we've communicated with, you know, your good selves. If there's anything they don't want to talk about or aren't comfortable about talking about, that we communicate that with you. But it's also our jobs to make sure that you get what you need and what you want out of that interview as well. So yeah, it's super important to at least have a professional connection with the talent.
Yeah, and delving deeper into that, because again, I think one of the things is a lot of these interviews can kind of, you know, and these chats are lovely because they're very positive, but I think that, you know, some people go, well, okay, well, Lauren's saying, you know, you're talking to Steve Macklin about Marvel, something like that, right? Which is a lovely thing to, but does that, you know, do you have to kind of, as a we'll call you a PR artist, we'll call you, obviously you're a professional.
I'll take it.
Yeah, you know, but like, do you sort of pick up on key phrases? And it's the art of conversation I'm trying to get at, really, for those people that struggle. You know, I've met, you know, at numerous, you know, student events, for example. I've sat down next to the person who sat on their own, you know, and asked them questions, and then, you know, they kind of come into their own. But that's just that's what I like to do, because I've been there in the, you know, so I feel that, I feel for that person. So you hook onto something that they say. They might say, oh, I'm interested in sports, so you can automatically go, oh, cool, well, you know, for my sins I used to be a Hull City fan, or something like that, or, you know, Manchester United, or anything like that, and then you build from there. So is it that for you, the art of conversation, do you dig for stuff like that, for that connection, or does it come naturally? How does that work for you?
I think for me now it comes a bit more naturally, but that's just because I've been doing it for so long. But it's a good question, because there's two ways that you could do it really well. It's probably a few ways, but there's two ways that come to mind. firstly, like you say, you can dig, you can research into that person. If you're doing a job like we do, you tend to know a little bit about them anyway, because you're either on their social media or you know a bit about their background. So using Steve Macklin as an example, again, obviously we knew he was an ex-military man, but the Marvel thing came up as a quick fire round question from an interview that he was doing. So I can't remember what it was something that, was it Falcon Winter Soldier? Right. No, he asked him for his top 3 Marvel films. Lovely. This is a contentious topic for me. Yeah. So I think he said his favorite film was Winter Soldier, and I understand why, because he was a soldier. So at the end of it, I was like, I've got to question your top 3. So we started talking while the journalist was on, but between interviews, we were just talking about the best Marvel films. So lovely. That was nice.
Lovely, yeah.
Yeah, and I think if you think that someone's going to be a bit difficult to open up, and again, that's not a criticism of an individual, doing a little bit more research into them, which is very easy to do nowadays, and maybe writing down some topic points or some questions. So if I'm doing this and we're doing our interviews on Zoom with a member of talent I haven't spoken to before, I'll have a conversation with them, kind of get to know them a little bit, break the ice a bit, and just make sure they know that, like you were saying before, we're a bit more casual, a bit more laid back, and just make sure that they're comfortable in that sort of environment. But you can do that by preparing yourself, or you can do that from being conversational. It just depends on the level of confidence and experience, really. But people should definitely be confident enough to open up that conversation, because they're not scared to talk to you. Think about it. They're literally about to talk to a load of media who are going to throw questions at them that they don't know what they are. Yeah. So if you're going to start talking to them about what you know they like, you could read past interviews with them. And again, using Steve Macklin as an example, because this Marvel example is a really good one. So you, as a new interviewer, could have read that in another interview and said, I saw your interview with such and such. Why is Winter Soldier your favorite? I'd say it was my third. And he'd launch off into a conversation because he's passionate about it. Yeah. So and then you can start bouncing off the other person. Yeah. Yeah. So that's a good way to do it. It's research, isn't it? I think exactly. is the key there. Preparation. Preparation. And I think that's one of the things, again, what I'd like to get out of this interview for anybody who's interested in a career in either journalism, wrestling journalism, or PR, what kind of things as a I'll tell you what, we'll do it from two folds. So we'll do it as a journalist first, and then we'll do PR. We'll do key skills for PR, and then we'll do some stuff from journalism as well. We'll do journalism first. So if you're a wrestling journalist and you're watching, an interview with an Impact star, and you go, I want to do that. I want to get in touch with Lauren. I want to get in touch with Simon. I want to make this connection. What kind of things do you want to see from a journalist? What kind of, I've spoken to Simon about this before, but obviously you're a different person with different views and values and things. So what kind of things do you want to see from a young journalist getting in touch with you guys, getting in touch with your consultancy, your agency, who, wants access to these stars, wants access to these people? What things do they need? And also, as an extension of that, what do you not want to see? Because again, that kind of gets glossed over quite a bit, I think. So as a journalist, you mean, not as a prospective? Yeah, we'll go journalism first, then we'll do PR as well. Yeah. So from journalism, I would expect someone who wants to interview Impact talent to be a wrestling fan, or to at least be someone very knowledgeable in the topic. I don't think that's as important with PR. But from a journalism perspective, you need to know what you're talking about. You need to know the history, you need to have that research capability and the preparation capability. So for example, as I mentioned earlier, I used to work in recruitment. So if we got a load of CVs for a job, you would know from how someone approached you, so how much individual preparation they put into this. So you'd get some that were carbon copies, and you could tell they've been sent to 20 different places, but then you'd get some that were addressed personally to you, that were written personally for the job, that were, their skills have been adapted around the job, all that kind of thing. So you want that kind of individuality from somebody, where you can see that they really want this. Like, how are they going to make themselves stand out from the crowd? Because there are a lot of people. So make yourself stand out would be the first thing, and make sure that it's something you are passionate about, because there's no point in writing stories and interviewing people that you're not really interested in. I mean, I know that journalists, kind of more general journalists, may have to do that. You know, someone who works for a newspaper, who works on features, may have to work on a feature they're not necessarily interested in, but they have that feature experience to be able to put it together. I think it's very different with something as niche as wrestling. And I guarantee there's no wrestling journalist that isn't a wrestling fan. I've never spoken to one ever. So that's what I would say, is make your passion known, be professional, and be gracious as to what you're given, because we have had a few people who've come in, we've never seen them before, they've got no stats on their website, it's brand new, all that kind of thing, and they've come in and asked for the current Impact champion, and we're like, you can't really do that straight away, but we've got some of the, you know, some other talents, some of the newer talent and things like that, that might be available for an interview, and they've just not been happy about that, and that doesn't wash very well, because it's almost like there's that whole thing of paying your dues in wrestling. I'm not a big fan of that, but it's kind of similar in the sense of, if we offer you someone, accept it, build up your interviews. We'll help you build that website and your numbers. Once you get to a certain point, you know, we can start looking at other things, but we also do offer press pass as well, which you were mentioning before. You know, we can put, you know, newer journalists. Yeah, exactly. We can put pretty much anybody on that, anybody we want to, obviously. But you know, you might not get to answer questions for the first couple, but you can use the content that you've heard on that call for your pieces. So it's still fresh content, and then eventually you'll, you know, build up and to do stuff like that, because we do like offering those opportunities. And will as often as we can.
And I think that's lovely that you do that. And people, like I said, I've noticed in those media calls. And one of the things, just for anybody listening to this, because I'd like to use the audio, because it's lovely to speak to you and hear you.
Oh, you're so sweet to me.
Seriously, it's really nice that you've made the time for me today. But one of the things I learned, the biggest one I learned from, was turning down a media call with back in the day when we were only doing written features on Soundsphere. I turned down a media call with Billy Corgan, and I'm a huge Smashing Pumpkins fan. And I turned it down because I wanted to speak to Billy myself, and it was with Simon, and I will never forget that in my life, because I've never interviewed Billy Corgan since. And one of these days, you know, it's still a bucket list interview, and I could have done it, could have had that opportunity. So yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there you go. There is your evidence. Anybody listening,
and that's true, right? But you learn from that, you know.
Yeah, you do. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Like, not professing in any way that you won't make any mistakes.
Oh yeah.
Try not to let your ego get ahead of you. That's the main thing. That's what I'd say in relation to that. I don't remember that.
No,
I wasn't using that as an example.
It was a decade. It was like a decade ago. It was a long time ago. It was one of the first ones as well. So when you think about it like that, you know, Simon didn't have to give me that opportunity on the media call, but he did, and I appreciate that. And obviously, you know, we had Kurt Angle through Simon since then, Bobby Roode, all those wonderful talents that are now doing, you know, what they're doing, and obviously Impact as a launching pad for so many incredible talents, and a launching pad really for us into wrestling journalism. So from Soundsphere's perspective, we're so grateful. But just for people listening, you know, it is important to, you know, you will make mistakes, and it's important to learn from those, you know. So when we do get those opportunities now, if I'm available, I take anything and everything, because and that's the other thing I think I want to stress, is that everybody's interesting. I think that's the thing, and from a journalism perspective and from a PR perspective, like, you can find, so say you've got any talent, right? Any talent comes to you and you've got to do a media call, you've never met them before. I know that you have the skill set and the interest in that person, that you can find something, right? Absolutely. Yeah, you're passionate about people, and I think that's one of the things. If you get someone who's just started out, maybe they're you know, they're green, as they say, maybe they've just started out in the industry, there is something there that you will be able to make something interesting from a you know, from a feature perspective or anything. And I think that's the key, is that you can find. I was talking to somebody yesterday who he runs a sports journalism hub in Leeds, and he was saying, you know, he gets all the, you know, the footballers and the you know, tennis players and everything like that. But what he likes to do is he likes to speak to the umpires of the tennis matches. So when these big press conferences are happening and there's all these people clamoring to interview the major performers, he'll go off and he'll get that interview later on. He'll do it later on in the day, but he'll go off and speak to, you know,
Fantastic. Yeah.
And I like that, because he, you know, he's finding, you know, while everyone's clamoring and queuing up and freaking out, and, you know, he's like, no, I'm gonna collect data. You know, I'm gonna speak to everyone and everybody that I can while I'm here. And I like that. And I learned that because, and that will always stick with me. Going back to that example I gave you, that will always stick with me. Like, that was a missed opportunity for me. But ever since then, I know that when Simon's offered me something, when you've offered me something, if I'm available, I will absolutely take it, because we're great. You know, we're lucky to have it. There's not everybody gets those. Not everybody gets those opportunities. Sure. And I think that's one of the key things is that I started my career in journalism dreaming about doing wrestling stuff. Like, I never even thought it was possible. You know, and I remember contacting Simon for the first time, and then, you know, working with you since then. The friendliness, you know, these people are people that I watch on TV as a fan. You know, I'm a huge fan of Impact. I'm going to be staying up till 5 a.m. tonight doing a live stream of Hard to Kill, because I'm such a fan of these. You know, not with the actual event on, but just commentating. It's what I like to do in my spare time. I like to do in my spare time is watch wrestling with people and talk about wrestling. But yeah, you know. But anyway, sorry. The reason I mentioned this is that I'm passionate about it, and to have these opportunities sitting, you know, with people like yourself, even, you know, now as well, getting your knowledge, you know, it's such a wonderful part of the job, you know what I mean? Like to be able to have these connections, and that connection is so valuable. And that's what I've heard from chatting to you. Chats like this, and just building that connection, which is my winding round my point that I was supposed to make 10 minutes ago when I started this. Is that the connection, that networking is so important.
That's the networking, that is where the networking comes in, because it's the same, you know, the other way around. You know, this is important for us as well. You know, when it comes to, say, for example, and this isn't an announcement or anything, guys, but, you know, say, for example, there was a tour later on in the year. You know, we need you guys as much as you need us. We want you to come to the shows. We want you to have a great experience, and, you know, interview as many people as you can, and come to every show and do all of that. It works both ways. You know, and that's the whole networking thing.
I think that's the key thing as well. I think you feel very valued, and I'm not saying this about any other companies, because of course, you know, very grateful to have any opportunities, but I think that there is that value that, you know, we are valued as journalists, and and I think that's important too. You know, you know, even though you don't like, I don't think that Impact Wrestling needs my feature, you know, you make me feel like you do. And, you know, and it's lovely. And when you get a share on Twitter and social media, you feel real warm inside, you know. And I think that's
why we word it in certain ways as well, because we're British. It is different to the American account in the sense of we're a bit more earthy and can use different sort of language. So I think I put one of yours up the other day, and I just put, was it Josh Alexander one? Yeah, and I just started chat with our friend Dom from Soundsphere, because, you know, you are our friend. You know, there's certain guys that, and I'm not going to mention any names because I'll miss somebody out and then I'll offend someone. But there are, you know, there's certain people we've worked with for years that I regard as personal friends who are journalists. You know, we've watched them and helped them progress through their career with the experience they've had with Impact as well. And it's so lovely to be a part of. And it's so lovely to be able to call, you know, you guys our friends, and that we can, you know, because there are instances where sometimes that talent can't make an interview and we only find out at the last minute and stuff like that. But you guys are so gracious about it that means a lot to us as well. So it is swings and roundabouts, and, you know, it does develop really good working friendships and working relationships, and it's really special. There's a lot of really special things that have come from working with Impact, and similarly to the stuff that we've mentioned, you know, the tours were very special, the relationships we've built are very special, and that's something that will never go away. And as long as you keep that attitude, and you remember where you came from, and you remember who helped you, you remember your mistakes and you learn from them, then that's a winning combination. You can't really go wrong. And as long as you don't let people walk all over you as well. That's a big one.
Yeah, I think that you could do that unconsciously, I've found, certainly as I've got older. It's not necessarily because people are bad people, it's just a natural thing that people
absolutely and there were issues like that with the old kind of TNA setups as well, that, you know, there was some real misogyny that, you know, went on in the background. And
interesting.
Yeah, it's I mean, it's been reported on, this isn't like,
Yeah.
this isn't new information. It's not that way now, but some things do kind of residually linger. So like there's a lot of people that still just assume that it's Simon that does all of the impact stuff in the UK.
Yeah.
And Simon's amazing at what he does. I adore Simon. He's one of my favorite people in the whole world. We've become very, very close friends, and we are a dream team, and it's an amazing setup. We're very, very lucky. So it's not on him, it's not his fault, but it does happen, it just, someone will need to contact about something that I do, but it'll automatically go to him.
Interesting.
Or, that kind of thing.
Good point.
And I think that's kind of a kind of general thing. It can be a general thing in wrestling. I know other, women or otherwise that have experienced that kind of, I can't think of the word for it really. Like being overseen, almost like you're kind of like, hello, I'm here.
Interesting
putting
point.
your hand up in the background. So that's something that I would use to advise people of as well, is like, make your voice heard. If you're not happy with something, if you've done something that you really want to shout about, then shout about it. And there are certain newer members of the team at Anthem and Impact that make a point of praising myself and Simon, or singling either of us out when we do something good, and it means the absolute world. It really does, and it makes such a difference. There's been a lot of very frustrating moments working for Impact over the years, as I'm sure you can imagine, trying to really advocate for the UK fans and the expectations over here. It's been quite difficult because obviously it came from a time where it was on free TV, we were doing fan parties, literally everything was thrown at the UK fans for free, which is amazing. But it's not a sustainable business model, and that was proven by the pattern that the company has followed. And it's hard to reiterate that to fans and to make that clear without offending anybody or bringing it across the wrong way. But there's a lot of UK fans that feel underappreciated, unloved. We've probably lost quite a few. That some have come back,
right?
That kind of thing. So it's I'm going off on one now. What was I actually talking about?
we were talking about how you sometimes that misogyny that's not there now, but certainly lingers a little bit. Like it's an interesting point you make. I mean that's, would you advise because again, I think it's something that I unfortunately see in the music industry quite a lot, where there's still a lot of issues for young women and non-binary individuals, for example, who are struggling to find their place. And I wonder, as someone that has found that and is a confident person, again, it might be interesting to get your viewpoint on what it's like for a young woman trying to get into wrestling, because again, there's a lot of female wrestling fans out there, non-binary wrestling fans out there that are trying to build a career and maybe nervous because they'll see, they'll maybe see one side of it. They'll see it's a very male dominated industry, and it might be interesting, if we can squeeze that question in there to get your viewpoint. Oh,
we can talk for as long as you want, Dom. It's fine.
Oh, cool.
It is a difficult one. It's kind of been a bit up and down as well, because when I first started doing these things, it was, as I say, there were kind of those elements of it, and certain incredible female members of staff that worked for the company when I first started were lost because of this treatment. Jules Wortman, for example, who is an absolutely phenomenal PR professional, who's worked with Johnny Cash, Johnny Depp, like all massive people in the music industry, as she was like a senior PR for Warner Music. I think it was Warner. She was head of PR for Impact when I first started working for them, and she was lost because of this attitude.
Right. Okay.
So that was, and it's a shame because she was actually going to take me on and take me to Nashville to work for Impact, but that's another story. But everything happens for a reason. I ended up meeting my husband, who is a professional wrestler in Britain. So that wouldn't have happened if I had have gone there. But one thing I would say is maybe talk to and find a mentor that you can work alongside, whether you're a girl, guy, non-binary, otherwise, find somebody that you feel like you could learn from. The majority of people will give you their time. I've had people contact me in the past asking for advice of how to get into things and stuff. I have no problem offering advice to people whatsoever. And I would say that now, you know, if anybody's listening to this and wants any advice, you know, I'm on Twitter at Lauren-Klair, Klair. Feel free to drop me a message. Actually, no, ignore that. Go onto Instagram, same address, because I don't go on Twitter much anymore for toxic reasons, apart from when I'm working. But I would happily offer any advice to people. Have a look at who do you like, who do you want to be, whose career do you want to follow. You know, it could be, you know, you, Dom, you know, someone could look at you, loves your interviews, loves your style, that kind of thing, could approach you and say, you know, how did you do this, how did you set this up? And I think I do remember when we first started that there were some people approaching similar outlets to yours, but like wrestling specific, saying, I want to set this up, can I ask some advice on this? And they were like, no, because you're going to be a competitor and blah blah blah.
Interesting, really.
So, and I get it to a certain extent, but it depends what your intentions are with things.
Yeah, I don't know. So I think is it so? Oh, sorry, I cut you off there. I apologize. What were you saying?
No, it's fine. I'm rambling anyway. No, go on. It's fine.
I was about to make a joke about maybe that's where you had like maybe that's because we're from Yorkshire. We're like share the, you know, I'm always like the way I look at it, because, you know, like we have a lot of young journalists that write up, you know, the pieces that we have, because that's part of our business model to work with young people from universities. But one of the things I find is that, you know, I'm like, as long as I can trust you, I'll share I will, like, for example, I wouldn't share your details or your professional details with just anybody. I would share it with somebody I trusted. Okay, a professional person that I would introduce you to and connect you up with, and they would do the job. Anthony, for example, who you've worked with before. You know, that kind of person. And I'm very much share the you know, the knowledge and stuff. But it is interesting, and I think maybe that's more of a modern. Although I am, or
maybe it is a northern thing.
Yeah,
like, obviously I'm from Manchester. I have Yorkshire blood as well, so you know, it's kind of very share the love, help everybody expand. But it's weird as well, because especially since the pandemic, people's attitudes are changing and people's directions are changing. So, for example, I know I mentioned earlier that I'm back in education. We were supposed to go to Nashville, funnily enough. In 2020, I was going to record an EP at an analog studio and all this. It was all very exciting.
Oh, wow.
But got kiboshed. So your views change, your priorities change. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to go back to college and I'm going to learn how to do it myself. So I'm now doing a BTEC extended level 3 diploma in audio and music production. So then I'm going to go from that into a filmmaking degree in September.
Congratulations. That's
Thank
amazing.
you. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm really proud of myself, because I'm not an academic person at all, and I've clawed my way through my career. It's not come from an education, and that's something I would pass back as well, is like, claw your way through it. Don't think you need an education. The only reason I'm re-educated now is because I'm in my mid-30s and I don't want to claw my way through it again, because I've already done it. So I want to go through it, and it's a networking avenue as well. But I've lost my trail of thought again. I do this a lot.
No, it's okay. I love it. It's funny because I recently got an ADHD diagnosis, so now I'm really good. I'm much better at
ADD.
There you go. You see. So I'm much better at like clawing myself back now. To waffle.
Yes. I might have to learn from you then. I might have to come from you to learn how to do this, because I'm not very good.
No, it's fine. It's absolutely fine. Like I say, you carry on and then go, okay, cool, I'm stopping here. Just going to bring this back. It's about, I always look at it as
recognizing it.
Like a sliding door. You got to go. So you see yourself go, whoop. So you go, you bring yourself back to center, and then you'll see yourself, and it's natural and it's totally fine, totally understandable. You got to go, whoop. You go. It's just always bringing yourself back. But we were talking about, you know, being a young woman, particularly, you know, non-binary person in you know, media and stuff like that. And then we were talking about, you know, how you've developed and changed as well. And that segues nicely into my, you know, we'll do last 2 or 3 questions now, because I know it's your weekend and I don't want to take too much of it.
It's fine, honestly, don't worry.
But how have you, you know, I think that's, you know, for everybody, it'd be interesting to know, how have you changed and developed? You know, you've seen me use some of these questions for wrestlers and performers, but I think they're very applicable to, you know, to people in general. You know, but again, so lucky that I've managed to have your time today to you know, to share this stuff with me.
I'm lucky you wanted it. So.
Absolutely. Well, again, so, you know, I will always remember, like, stick with my, you know, and this is going to sound weird, but like, I always remember your voice and enthusiasm when I'm on a phone. Like, you know, and the fact that you're always like, you'll always be happy to speak to me. You know, I know that's part of the job, but also it means a lot. So it'll always be, and it sounds weird if I say it's burned into my memory. It's not a criticism. It's just,
that's really nice.
It's just nice where, like, you know, it's like tone of voice, all of it. It's so nice when you're nervous. And then people always like, why do you get nervous? You've been doing this for so long. You've interviewed, like, you know, I've interviewed some of my heroes, etc., and all this stuff. And I'm like, it doesn't change. Never changes.
Well, that's good, because that means you care about it. And if you stop getting nervous, that's when I would be worried.
All right.
Because that's where ego comes in.
It's interesting. It is interesting. Maybe I think you're right. And I think, like, so, sorry, anyway, see, I've done it now. There you go.
We're doing really well.
Yeah. But how have you changed and developed as a person, you know, since you started in your career? Because you know, again, you know, going into education, and I'm talking about you personally here, you know, you can bring in professionals, but like the you know, the desire to go into education, for example, as well as work in wrestling, as well as work in PR, as well as be a musician. You know, you've started a certain way with a certain mindset, and then you're here now years later. How have you changed and developed, would you say, as a person?
Oh God, so much. When it was 2012, end of 2011, beginning of 2012 that I started in wrestling, if we're going to go back that far, so that's 10 years. I was, when I say I was a different person, then I've not completely changed. My morals and values are still very much the same, but life changes you, doesn't it? So I only met my husband in 2013. We only got together in 2014. But I would say his influence on me has calmed me. You know, I do have anxiety. It was only really in my 30s that, when I turned about 30, that I actually realized what it was, where it came from. You know, my parents went through a very tempestuous, very nasty divorce when I was very young, and you don't, especially back then, didn't acknowledge that kind of thing. So that was probably impacting my behavior more than I realized. You know, I can get very highly strung, very anxious. Like I was saying about arguing on social media and stuff, I like to have a healthy debate with people. I enjoy that. I like to be given a different perspective on things. I might not necessarily agree with it, but I like to hear it, and I like to feel educated. You can do that face to face. Social media doesn't really lend itself 9.9 times out of 10 to do that. I think that was having a massive negative impact on me as well. But that kind of developed over time, because my husband Danny, who's also known as Delicious Danny Hope, many people will know, is very laid back. He's very, sometimes too laid back, but ultimately it's had such a positive influence on me in the case of stop sweating the small stuff, stop trying to change things that you can't change.
Interesting.
It's and that has a real impact on your mental health and your general kind of viewpoint in life. It's like, you know, I mentioned before, you know, Vicky Haskins is my best friend. She finds it hilarious when I'll comment on something on Facebook and it'll come up in her timeline, and she'll just put a GIF up saying, "Here she is," and that brings me back into the room, you know. And we have a banter about that, and she's brilliant at that. But I would say Danny has probably had the most positive influence on me, and obviously I've grown a lot in the, you know, I'm 36 now. I was 26 10 years ago. Went through a bit of a nasty relationship that obviously negatively impacted, but through that time, I've kind of become more humbled. You learn a lot through your career as well. You make your mistakes, you learn from them. In the old setups of TNA, there was a lot of frustrations, and I used to go out of my way to do certain things or projects and put personal time in, and it was very underappreciated at times, and that negatively impacts you as well. But as time has gone on, and obviously the pandemic has influenced it too. 2 years ago, I had to take over my grandma's care as well. That's been very, very, very stressful. We've just moved her into a flat down the road from us, and we're selling her house. So doing that on top of education, full-time job, 2 fluffy babies and a 37-year-old man-child to look after, you know, it's a lot, but it brings you back into the room. And the pandemic, as well as all of that, puts your life into perspective. So it's taking your life experiences and showing how they have changed you as a person. I'm very, very different now than I was 10 years ago. And that impacts how you work as well. And I think we're very lucky to have impact in its current setup with Anthem. We've got some fantastic people we work with, like Ant Evans, who's like one of the former heads of PR for UFC, who is, doing a lot of stuff in the background, working very closely with Scott and Ariel over in Canada and stuff. And it's a great team that we're working with, and you can take all that life experience from however long, learn from it and move it forward, and it helps you learn what's important in life as well. And I think speaking out had that sort of effect on me as well, with that stuff that happened. And it just made me think, I'm investing too much time into something that's not giving anything back to me anymore. When someone accuses you of something publicly that isn't true, and everybody all of a sudden starts going, oh, she's a terrible person, I mean, it was only a handful of things, but it affects you.
Of course.
A complete stranger who saved your tweets for a couple of years and tries to do something like that, that very much changed my perspective on how much I want to be involved with wrestling outside of Impact. Impact is very much my focus in wrestling. So, and it's something I want to keep striving to help achieve and get better, and it's something very special to be a part of. So, taking all of that sob story and moving it forward, to turn that into some advice, I would always say to people, no matter how hard or annoying or underappreciated you might feel at certain times in your career or in your life, turn it into a positive, learn from it. You can make mistakes. It's good to make mistakes. If you don't make mistakes, you don't learn. If someone is awful to you, or you realize a friend isn't who you thought they were, or something like that, use that to build your character and to move you forward, because you can use that in your personal life, you can use that in your career, and all of that is positive. And I would say all of those personal things have had an impact on where I'm at in my career now.
Amazing. And thank you so much for sharing that, personal aspects of your life as well. I appreciate it. I think it's, it's good to get that human, obviously.
Absolutely.
I think obviously it's relatable as well. A lot of people are struggling, and you've struggled and overcome that, and it's great to hear.
I want to see people thrive. Sorry to interrupt. I do want to I want to help people. I want to see people thrive. If people want help from me, come and ask me. That's turn that into another piece of advice. Don't be afraid to ask. The worst thing people can say is no.
Absolutely.
We're very approachable. Myself and Simon are very approachable.
I can attest to that. Absolutely. I say my break in wrestling journalism came from you guys, and we'll ever be forever be grateful for that. Before we finish up, 2 or 3 more questions now. The first question, you'll know I asked this too, but I think it's important to get people's definition, because again, people get so wrapped up in, especially, and we talked about this earlier, especially in the entertainment and the arts, because people go, I'm seeing Lauren's success, or I'm seeing, a wrestler's success. And I'm like, oh, well, I'm never going to reach that. I'm never going to get there. And I must be a terrible person, or I must be, bad at what I do, because I'm not at that level. And people's perceptions of success can be quite skewed. And so I wanted to ask you about your relationship with success and what it means to you as a person.
You come up with such good questions. This is why I really enjoy listening to, when we do interviews and stuff, you come up with some really great questions. So a piece of advice there, people listen to Dom's interviews. Look at the questions. Let me think about this one.
Yeah, take your time, of course.
With success, I'd probably had a little bit of a tempestuous relationship with success. I can understand why people feel that way, because I felt that way myself. I think that's where my advice before came from, really, is to say that, don't think that if it takes time that you're not successful. Every single little thing is a success. Sometimes getting out of bed in the morning is a success. And I'm so glad that we now live in a world where that is recognized as a normal thing. In most cases, there's still a lot of work to do. But, especially if someone's, who suffers in that way, and, they get out of bed in the morning and that is your first achievement of the day. Don't, if you get to the end of the day and think, I've done nothing today, think back on your day, pick out the little things. With my personal relationship with success, I would say I wish I'd knew that earlier. I used to work myself into the ground and give myself a really hard time. Because of my kind of personal history and stuff. I moved out at 16. I had a very difficult relationship with my family for a long time. It wasn't necessarily any faults of anyone's, it's just the way it went. I had to navigate my own way through life, and that took up a lot of time. And I think that's why I'm now in education now, being in the place that I am in my life. But sometimes it's hard to see success, at the time. I certainly didn't see it. I would see everything as, not everything as a failure, but you kind of get your high points, but you don't necessarily actively pick out the successes. So you brought up a really good question there, is to say that every day find your successes. You know, even, you know, if you like journaling
out of bed
or
anything, whatever,
yeah, exactly. I made my bed this morning. Success. I didn't argue with someone on social media today. Success. You know, I didn't go on social media today. Success. I know this sounds a bit counterproductive coming from a social media manager, but I think I'm probably better placed. Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm probably better placed than most people to tell people to stay off it, to, you know, take breaks from it. Or, you know, set up your social media so you only see certain things, you know, follow the Impact UK page, for example. But, you know, block negative words, block negative energy. You know, you can go into your accounts and block all of these things. And I would say social media probably has a big hand in people feeling unsuccessful, because there's so much falseness posted, you know, out there. And I think being realistic about what you're looking at helps you feel successful as well. You go on Instagram, you see all these people looking perfect. It's not real. You know, you're on a diet plan or trying to lose weight or whatever, and you're looking at these accounts saying, I lost this amount in blah, 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 and I look like this. It's not true. 9 times out of 10, it's not true. So everybody's journey is very individual. And you have to remember that. I'd say that is a key to success, is to remember that your journey is your journey. It's not supposed to be like anybody else's. It's not supposed to be a carbon copy of someone else's. You can look up to other people and, you know, maybe be mentored by other people, take influence from other people, but you are you, and there is no other you that exists. And that's a success in itself. So it's loving yourself, believing in yourself. Confidence isn't always something that comes naturally, and it doesn't necessarily need to, but coming to understand yourself, your own behaviors, your triggers. Triggers is a big thing. That was something that when I kind of reached a point where I realized that anxiety was a problem, is realizing what those triggers are. I'm very lucky that my husband is very, very supportive, and I'm very, very lucky in that sense. It was something he didn't really understand, and he actively went away to understand it. You know, he you know, read up on it. I sent him examples of perspectives from partners and stuff that deal with people with anxiety. So, you know, that kind of thing is also a success. And that will attribute to your career success. We're lucky that we live in a world now where companies can't really get away with a lot of stuff that they used to. If we're going back to the career thing, and say you're applying for a job or anything like that, if you go for an interview and you're not feeling it, it's just as important that that company is right for you as it is that you're right for that company. Just because they're hiring for that job, say you don't get it, that's not a failure. And this comes from my recruitment days as well. That, like, you get a lot of people feeling like a failure because they might have to go for 5, 6, 7, maybe 10 interviews before they land a job. Not getting a job isn't a failure. If you weren't right for that company, they weren't right for you. So that's a success in itself, because you've dodged a bullet.
Interesting point.
So as you can probably tell, my relationship with success has been all over the place. But I think, you know, find the small things. Don't sweat the small stuff. And believe in yourself. I think that's a big thing for me at the moment, because I'm in quite a transitional period with education and things like that. And I believe that I can do it.
I think
it's the first time in my life I've ever felt like that.
That's wonderful to hear as well. It's so nice to hear. And I think, again, one of the things that I really like about speaking to you is that, like, a lot of these interviews can be quite sunny and lovely, and it's wonderful, but, like, you could tell you've been through some do you know what I mean? Like, and like, so you're coming at this from a really, you know, experienced, you know, and I'm sorry you had to go through all that stuff, but it sounds like
I'm not. I'm not.
I
mean, I appreciate it, but I'm not, because all of that has made me who I am today. And that's, again, another thing I'd pass on to other people. Everything that you're experiencing and everything you do experience turns you into the person you become. So you can allow yourself to turn it into a positive, or you can dwell on the negative. And obviously I would always focus on the positive, but this comes from a place of experience. It's hard to do if you've not experienced it.
Absolutely.
But that is, turn everything that you do into a positive, even if it just comes down to being experienced and learning from experience.
Absolutely. I love that, and thank you so much for, again, being so succinct, actually, because you say that you trail off, but that was really succinct and really, really cool in terms of, just because people really struggle with, I find, and having someone, who's been through real stuff and but has this really glamorous, I think that's really, because again, to look at you from social media and obviously the type of job you do, it's quite glamorous. But here you are.
It seems it.
Yeah. I think that's it. It is cool.
That's that perception thing again.
Yeah, it is cool what you do, absolutely, and you deserve to for every success you get. But I think it's also nice to have someone go, yeah, well, I've also been through the ringer, so to speak. And I really respect that and appreciate that.
Well, I hope people relate to that as well, because everybody's been through the ringer in their own way, and everybody tries to equate what they've been through, but someone going, oh, someone's always going through something worse. But do you know what you're going through is the worst thing to you right now. So don't discount what you're going through as not being as bad as someone else's, so it doesn't matter. It does matter, because it's affecting you at this moment. So sorry,
no, carry on. I love listening to you, so
I was just going to say, so just try and use whatever you're experiencing to obviously you've got to get through it before you can learn from it. But just remember, when you're going through it, that you will learn from it, and that in a year's time, 5 years time, 10 years time, it's not going to matter. So breakups are a good example of that. When I was 19 and split up with my first boyfriend, it was the end of the world. It was literally the worst thing that ever happened to me. Now it just does not matter in any sense of the imagination. And I know some things are bigger than that, and losing family members, all that kind of thing. It's awful and it's horrible to go through, but there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. And always come back to yourself. Don't lose yourself in whatever's happening to you, because you still exist.
I think that's one of the interesting things. Like, I'm training to become a counselor at the moment, and one of the things that we get sort of not drilled into us, but certainly talked about, is
enforced.
If somebody comes to you with, oh man, things are always, I'm pretty lucky in the grand scheme of things, other people have always got it worse. It's kind of important to go, but that doesn't diminish your struggles.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think that's that person in that moment, in that that session or that time, that's their time to talk about whatever's stressing them out. And there's quite a tendency for people to go, but compared to other people, they've got it loads worse. And of course, there's not diminishing anybody else's struggles and how large they are, but that I find it's important for people to go, certainly in my experience, to just take a breath and go, actually, I'm what this is what matters to me, and that's important.
Absolutely.
And that's what I'm hearing you're saying anyway.
It's a big thing. I mean, like you're saying, you're training to be a counsellor, which is an incredible thing to do. And me coming out with the same thing that gets drilled into you, it actually says a lot to me about what I've learned from my experiences, to know that that's something that psychologists will say to someone who's suffering. So that makes me feel good in the sense of I've been giving people good advice. But I would 100% agree and reiterate that, is to not discount what you're going through. And if you need to speak to someone, speak to someone. I know we're kind of getting onto mental health here, but clearly it's something that's very personal to both of us. And no matter what career you do, no matter what you're a fan of, no matter what industry you want to get into, protecting yourself and protecting your mental health is so imperative. That you need to make sure that you don't lose yourself in the process of whatever it is you're trying to do. Don't take a job because you think it's going to be good for your career if you don't like your boss, or you don't like the place you went to, or you didn't get a good vibe, just because you got offered it, or just because you think it might do well in your career. I've taken jobs in the past that I thought were going to be good for me, or just because I needed one, that have had such a negative impact on my life and my mental health without even realizing it till years later. So I think the undercurrent, and I know I've said it a couple of times, but the undercurrent of everything is just be true to the person that you are.
Absolutely.
And just take that through everything in life. Everything will fall into place. Everything will be okay. And even if something's really hard at one stage in life, you've got to look for the light at the end of the tunnels. It will be okay.
Absolutely, and that's a lovely, way to end this portion of the interview, the reflective portion of the interview. I could talk to you for hours. I love talking to you. Hopefully, we'll do a part 2 on that one day. But as we wind up, you mentioned obviously some names that have helped you on your career, in the past, and people that have been with you, supported you, your partner and friends and things like that. In terms of your career and the people that have supported you, what is your message to those people who have got behind you in your career and will continue to do so? What have you got to say to those people that have been with you through all those stresses and through your career highs and lows, etc., and will continue to support you?
Oh God, that actually makes me feel a little bit emotional. Just thank you. What more can you say to people than thank you for being there? Thank you for believing in me. Thank you for advising me. There's people all for, I could go back to Graham at Mank-Frank and say, thank you for giving me that opportunity. Simon, obviously, thank you for believing in me and, bringing me into the impact fold and being such an incredible friend. Our relationship, our friendship goes past, working relationships. Danny, obviously, I'm incredibly lucky to have, to be married to. Vicky, I don't know what I'd do without. Dilo, obviously, I mentioned. Dilo and Al Snow are the two people that have mentored me through wrestling like nobody's business. I've learned so much from them. Earl Hebner, every tour that we were on together, he would always, he was a joy to work with anyway, but he would always come up to me at the end of every tour and just talk to me for about 5-10 minutes and tell me how amazing I was at my job. I adore him for that. It's something that makes it a real difference. But yeah, there's other people I could go on, but I feel like I'm accepting a bloody Oscar or something.
No, you take that time. You take that time for yourself. It's lovely to hear about all this stuff. Honestly, it really is.
There's so many people I could name, and then obviously there's plenty of people on the other side who didn't believe. And what I would say to people, going back to the advice thing, is ultimately those people don't matter, and every success you have is a big 2 fingers up to those people. So if you have someone in your life that you've had to cut out of it, or you experience that doesn't believe in you, forget them. Doesn't matter. Focus on the people who do. Absolutely. Yeah, all I can really do is thank those people. So.
That's awesome. And to finish off, I give people the chance to plug things. You mentioned the Impact UK Twitter and things like that. Is there anything you'd like to plug? Anywhere you'd like to send people who are listening to this? Who are obviously they've listened to your interview. They've taken the time out and they obviously respect what you do. Where would you like to send people? What would you like to tell them about?
To be honest with you, I'm not very active on my own social media. I've got nothing to plug myself, but there's the Impact UK pages. They operate quite differently from the main pages. So, if you're a UK fan, you don't want spoilers, that kind of thing. The Impact Twitter is at Impact UK. The Impact UK Facebook is Impact Wrestling UK. Those are the 2 main ones. But going back to some of the other kind of topics that we touched on, like mental health, if you are struggling, you need some advice, you've got the likes of Mind, Samaritans, places like that. Don't be afraid to speak to people. If you really don't feel that you could talk to anybody that you know or anything like that, there are plenty of organizations to speak to. There is no shame in needing help in things. So always approach somebody, even if it's just a neutral party like that. You could also follow my amazing husband, who is Danny the Hope on Twitter and Instagram. Other than that, just keep supporting British wrestlers, keep supporting Impact, and just keep being you.
Fantastic. And thank you so much for taking so much time out your day for me today, Lauren. It's
pleasure.
Look forward to working with you going forward, and obviously chatting to you and just honestly thank you for sharing so much of yourself today. I really appreciate it.
No, my pleasure. You're very, very, very lovely to talk to. Very easy to talk to.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you for having me as well. I don't feel like I'm a very interesting person, so
you absolutely are.